if you want to support the show, any of the shows, either this or whichever show, I'm not on right now because it's just a blanket ad for all of them, and the website, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com. In the description for any of the episodes of Beware of Spoilers, there is the option to donate. If you don't want to donate that way, you can donate directly through the website. We do have that, mwpnews.com. And if you don't want to support that way, then going to mwpnews.com will help out because we have ads there. We don't want to keep it, where there's a lot of ads. There's a few ads. But the point is, we want to make it so that way, we can sustain this for the long term. If people donate, we're never going to paywall anything, I don't think, as of right now. But you know, if people start donating, we'll start doing cooler and cooler stuff. Like donations are how we get to cover stuff like Tribeca and other, film festivals. And, we may be able to bring on more people to help out. So if you want to help out the show and you want more content from us, by all means, even just going and giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify helps out a lot. But that's it. That's the only ad we'll have on the podcast ever. But here's whatever podcast you're going to be listening to. Good evening and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. It is, I would say, probably the last. I mean, I think Beetlejuice is another big one, and I think Gladiator is another big one. But this year, we're not looking at a lot of really big releases. This might be the last huge release of the year. Um, unless one of these other movies coming out in the back half are suddenly do numbers that I think would be completely out of left field for them. I don't think Mufasa's going to do the numbers of Lion King. I don't think that. What's the other big one? Um, like like this Deadpool and Wolverine is probably the end of the major release. Like, I don't think Sonic's going to break 1 billion. I don't think Gladiator's going to break 1 billion, or Wicked, or Venom, or Craven, or anything like that. That said, where do we fall on Deadpool and Wolverine? So, full spoilers. Let's just get this out of the way. I'm not going to do my spoiler-free spoiler breakup of this episode. It's just going to be straight spoilers all the way through. Because I feel like it's hard to divorce the spoilers from the rest of the movie. Especially considering a lot of my things that I'm not 100% on about with this and how that impacts the wider Marvel Cinematic Universe. Are things that go into spoiler territory for the plot of this movie. And if you're someone who is looking to go into this kind of blind, I would say wait until after you've seen it to listen to this review. But I would recommend seeing it. I think a lot of things work here, and work better than have in previous movies of this sort. But we'll get into that. So let's get into it. I think that I really enjoyed this movie. I think that the Deadpool trilogy is one of the stronger Marvel trilogies to be released, and I think the issue that I have is I never want to see another one again. Um, at this point, I don't have anything further that I want to hear said about Deadpool. I would maybe sometime down the line we have another Deadpool movie where Deadpool lampoons some other major trend, and I think this movie comes along right where it is with this multiverse, era we're in right now, for lack of a better word. Um, I think that in that regard, it does work. Like, I think that them calling out oh, gratuitous cameos, oh, we're gonna do this, oh, all that stuff kind of worked. I think that doing that now in the middle of the multiverse saga is a little bit strange. Especially considering that you're still teeing up for the end of this saga to be a massive multiverse movie. I still believe that massive multiverse movie is going to end up being Secret Wars, but leading into actually be Avengers vs. X-Men. And I feel somewhat vindicated by that here, considering what's kind of shown in this movie. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Um, and I also don't think this is the movie that's going to save Marvel Studios. Not that I think Marvel Studios particularly needs saving. Like, I don't think everything that they've put out is great, and I think there's a lot of misses in their recent stuff. But I think their batting average has not gone down by a substantial margin post Endgame. I think that because there was a steady stream of hits in the immediate lead into Endgame with Black Panther, with Ant-Man succeeding. I mean, like, Phase 3 is just hit after hit after hit. Um, where it's like, you had, like, in a row, Ant-Man, Civil War, what else came after that? Like, even Doctor Strange was less good, Thor Ragnarok, they really hit their stride for a few years there, which really helped it. Then you get to, and the reason why it all worked is because you're compounding the story on itself, and you had a lot of room to really tell that. After Endgame, you have to kind of go back to square one. You have to go back to, okay, we have to do new characters and new things with these characters that we were all building towards this big thing. Now we got to kind of start fresh. And it's kind of like, it's kind of comic storytelling, but they treated it like the big event film, they treated like the end of the run. The death of Wolverine, they treated it like, instead of it being like, a major event in that. What Endgame is. So then you got to start fresh. You got to introduce new blood. You got to do a bunch of stuff, which is why a lot of what they've done has felt slower and more methodical. And at the same time, scattershot, where it's like, let's try to find things that people like. We'll throw a bunch of stuff at the wall. Whatever people like, we'll keep. Whatever they don't like, we'll ditch, and then we'll see what we got from there. I don't think this movie is going to completely right the ship for people who think that the MCU has fallen off. I mean, Deadpool says as much in the movie. He says, welcome to the MCU, buddy. Admittedly, you're getting on a bit of a low point. Like, I think that it's not so much a low point as much as it is a transitional period that comes from a series of decisions that come from above Marvel Studios. And to that end, I think that we're kind of in this place now where this movie is not going to do that. This is like all the Deadpool movies have been, where they take these big, extravagant things. At their core, they are personal films. And I think that that's kind of been the recipe for success with a lot of Marvel's movies, and what I think a lot of them more recently have been kind of missing. They're less these personal stories with a personal, thing with them, where this one fundamentally boiled down is Wade doesn't have a place in the universe, in the Fox universe. He is not, Deadpool anymore. He feels he's not going to amount to anything because he tries to get into the Avengers. And what I assume is the Fox universe version. Oh no, they said the Sacred Timeline. Somehow he got to the Sacred Timeline, applied to be an Avenger before Infinity War, got back, and it was all, a failure. And then it's weird because then after that they talk about it like it's in his universe when it's not. He went to an alternate timeline, and then there's the event. Like, it's a whole weird thing. But regardless, like, he feels he's not gonna do that anymore. He can't be, you know, he can't be a hero. If he can't be a hero, what's left for him? And he goes to, work at the car dealership. And, what's her name leaves him, because she's barely got any role in this movie. Vanessa leaves him. No, not Vanessa. Yeah, Vanessa. Is that her name? I don't know. His girlfriend leaves him, and he ends up living with Blind Al. And, like, what this feels like is, we've seen this happen a few times with this, where we're getting away from the main cast to spend a lot of time with a bunch of other characters, where it's like, you know, we saw this with the Flash. The side characters in the Flash are shafted in favor of, these other characters from, from DC and DC history. We saw this with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, where his auxiliary cast, like, is almost completely sidelined as as we explore the multiverse, for lack of a better word. And I think here we end up with this idea that we're gonna shaft most of the side cast from Deadpool, except for a few shots that are all in one location, except for Peter, who has a big role, and just kind of act like, this is a big, kind of multiverse movie. Granted, the episode does. I mean, they call it out in the episode when they talk about Elias, and he goes from Loki season 1, episode 5. This kind of felt like that a little bit. That episode where they go to the void, um, and they got to get back from the void. Um, and I think that kind of works fine for what this movie is meant to be. I think Wade gets the growth he needs, but what this is, it's a long and circuitous route to get us to a point where we have Hugh Jackman back as Wolverine in the prime X-Men timeline. That's what this movie is. It is to, you know, I think what we're aiming for right now is, and let's do this first before we get into it. Let's piece together where we are with the MCU leading into Avengers 5 in 2 years. Because we do have Avengers 5 still on the calendar for 2026. Um, it was going to be Kang Dynasty, but Jonathan Majors turned out to be a not great person and has been, removed from the project. It is not known if he can be recast or if they're going to go elsewhere. I get the sense from this that time traveling bad guys are not the TVA's priority anymore, and they're dealing with multiverse stuff, multiverse incursions, and things of that sort. To that end, I think we're looking at a movie where we get Avengers vs. X-Men. We've seen the beginnings of this, the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness post-credit scene where Clea shows up and she says in no uncertain terms, hey, look, there's an incursion coming, you gotta come with me. There is, the Marvels having the broken down walls between reality and what's her name? Monica getting stuck on the other side of that wall um, in the X-Men universe. This new timeline at the end appearing to be kind of a fixed prime timeline for the Fox characters. It seems like they're kind of getting us to a point where we can have all these characters share the screen again, and we can get there. Now let's talk about the they call it not tentpole characters. Um, I forgot what the exact term was. They're like tentpole characters, some bullshit like that. Which is the idea there are characters that are so important to the timeline that if they die, the universe starts to become undone. Um, like, and what this ends up with is, Wolverine dies, and because Wolverine died in Logan, the Fox universe has started to come undone. And now Paradox, who's a TVA agent, is like, look, I will mercy kill the universe. That way we don't have to worry about it slowly dying and just becoming a terrible place to be the entire time. You know, and I think that, as part of that, Deadpool has purpose there. Yeah. Like, the semantics of this are kind of confusing. I think that the implication is that a character has to become important to the universe for this to happen. And then if another version of that character, another variant of that character can become equally important, then that universe can stand, which is what this movie is. He's got to find a Wolverine variant because Logan is um, the tentpole character, whatever the hell they call it, or anchor character, anchor being. That's what they call it. The anchor being of that universe. So they need to find another one who can fill in. So Deadpool tries to find another one who can fill that role. And that Wolverine is the one where it's like, look, this is gonna be our he's gonna be the one who's gonna fix it. And then in the acts of the movie, he proves himself to be the hero worthy of that anchor being title. And like, I think the issue is it's like that's kind of the interpretation, how I'm choosing to interpret it. It's the way that makes the most sense. It doesn't make a ton of sense, but it would be interesting. Now, I think that the issue is if we're headed towards an incursion between this one and 616, I think the best way to handle that would be if Tony Stark was the anchor being for 616, and his death was that moment where it's like, oh, now the timeline's starting to decay. Like, that could be interesting. But again, like most other things that they've done so far with the multiverse in Marvel Studios, a lot of the rules feel kind of haphazard and not really well applied in a way that's like, okay, whatever, just make it work. Like, the rules for how you end up pruned back to the void is you need to do something to become a variant. But like, what did Laura do to kind of? How did Laura end up in the void? Is a question that I had while I'm watching this. It's like, if you said that, you know, if you said that like Elektra and Blade and Gambit, their universes all died, so they ended up in the void. Okay, I can buy that because they're all independent of the Fox X-Men universe. But Laura is very much entrenched in that. Laura is very much entrenched in that world of, like, if we get into a reality where that is the case, that would create a situation where we end up with this incursion between the X-Men and 616, and then we can get a movie that way. Um, but I could buy. Oh, that's what I was saying. I could buy. Sorry, I zoned out for a minute. I was reading something, and I think that I could buy everyone else, but Laura very much is from this same timeline because he goes through time, and that's the thing too. They do kind of play with that a little bit because it's like, how did he get to 616 to be interviewed by Happy to join the Avengers? Don't think about it too hard, and you'll be fine. But that that is a question, and I think it's implied that it's the same timeline. Like Deadpool and Logan take place in the same timeline or diverging timelines in the same universe, but a lot of that doesn't make a ton of, sense in a weird way. Um, it's kind of confusing, and I don't think the movie does a ton to fix it. But I think the ending does kind of blend it together in a way where it's like, okay, everyone together. Here's where we are. The Fox universe, as it is here, is all together. The Deadpool movies felt strangely independent from the rest of the Fox entries, where it's like it doesn't feel like, you know it doesn't feel like a, in the same universe as X-Men or First Class or any of those timelines. It feels strangely independent of all those. And if that's the case and this movie is entirely independent of all of those, then it stands to reason that this could be the universe that we've seen so far. This could be the universe of, like, I think the the universe of, you know where we have this version of Beast that is Kelsey Grammer, but he's a comic accurate Beast. We have the comic accurate Wolverine, and that being the case would be really interesting because now we have a universe where we care about both sides of this conflict. So if the incursion happens, it all comes together. I think a lot of the humor hits in this movie. I spent a lot of time talking about the wider implications for the MCU. I think a lot of the humor hits. I think there's a lot of things that kind of go on a little bit too long. Like, I think the opening sequence set to Bye 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 goes on just a smidge too long. Um, that said, I think the choice to open with the desecration of the grave from Logan is just absolutely genius. Um, like, the idea that, like, we're gonna open this movie literally digging up the grave of Logan is just a great idea. But I think that the fight sequence goes on too long. Um, I think that the what's what I'm looking for here, the the cameos I think work best in this movie compared to other movies like it, because I think that they actually serve the plot and they actually do something besides just be, oh, here's this person, oh, here's this person that you remember, or like, because that was the thing in like Multiverse of Madness or The Flash, where Multiverse of Madness, they're there for 5 seconds, they get murked, and then they move on. Like, in The Flash, they're there and they don't do anything, they just kind of show up. I think that giving the opportunity for, like, for Blade, for Elektra, for Gambit even, like, and I think the Gambit jokes go on great, where it's like he never had a movie, so no one knows his story, so he's leaning into that. And I think they have a lot of fun with his accent, where it's like at one point, like, one of the best jokes in the movie is, besides the one with Cavalrine, when he goes, uh, Gambit says something unintelligible, and what's his name? And Deadpool goes, "I have to ask, who was your dialect coach? The Minions." Like, it's such a great joke. And there was another one that, like, I laughed at, but no one else in the theater laughed at. I'm like, I don't know if it was meant to be a joke, but I forgot what it was. Um, the Wolverine montage is exactly what we wanted for Multiverse of Madness. That sequence when he's going through all the universes, but actually handled properly. And it's kind of a shame that they did it. And I think that's the other reason why I feel like we're gonna get more of these characters in the reasonably near future, because like they don't show a fight between Wolverine and the Hulk, and it's not like there isn't runtime to do. It's not like this movie's at 2.5, 2:45. This is coming in right over 2 hours. You have time to do that. You if you want to. You hold back in that regard if you're gonna do it later. Like, if you're gonna do it later, then you do what they did there. And I think that that's the big thing. Um, the Blade joke was great. Where Blade, like, there's only one Blade. There's only ever gonna be one Blade. And then, like, Ryan Reynolds looking directly into the camera. Like, it's a great little nod to that. A, the fact that they are making a new Blade movie. B, that Blade has appeared already once, despite people acting like that it hasn't. And C, the fact that it will not be Wesley Snipes, it will be Mahershala Ali. And D, the fact that it's been in development hell for what, 5 years now. We still don't have a director for it. Um, but I think this movie functions for what it is. It's kind of like we're telling the multiverse story. I think it's the best version of the multiverse story, which we haven't seen done particularly well, recently. Like, I think that this movie does it the best because it does lean into all the things that we already know, while also talking about what we could come to expect from this. And it's not just using the cameos as, oh, and here's this person, oh, here's this person. They all do something and have a role. Especially in the third act. I think that works. I think Emma Corrin is fantastic, even though they don't have a ton to do in the movie. Um, the like so this is a 5-star movie. This is a rush out and see it immediately. I think that, like, especially if you're concerned about spoilers. I've spoiled a lot and I've said a lot. I think this movie has a lot of heart and I think it does a lot of things really well. Um, Check this movie out now. About 20 minutes in, we've talked about Deadpool and Wolverine. It's a 5-star movie. It's great. What is going on with the MCU? Let's address this right now, and we're going to use this opportunity to make predictions about tomorrow's panel. Because this episode's going to go up tonight. Tomorrow, about 24 hours from when this episode goes up, there's going to be a panel in San Diego. Marvel Studios is having a massive Hall H panel. What are they announcing? Let's talk about what we know. Definitively, Captain America Brave New World is coming out on February 14th of next year. They're not moving that date. Trailer's out. Trailer has that date. Movie's gone through reshoots for a year. There's no way they're moving that date. Then we have May, whatever, that first week of May, that first Thursday in May. That's Fantastic Four. A year from today, Thunderbolts. And then it's either the first or the second week in November, you have Blade. Then we have nothing between Blade and Kang Dynasty. And then I think there are 2 dates between Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars in 2027. So what are we bringing to San Diego Comic-Con? Now, I think Captain America's going to get an extended look. I think we'll get a first look at Fantastic Four. Maybe not we, the public at large, we, the people who are in attendance at Hall H, will get a first look at Fantastic Four. And I think, too, we get a first look at Thunderbolts, because that's been shooting. So maybe it is just like the Bad Boys Ride or Die at CinemaCon last year, where it's like, hey guys, we're shooting this, we'll be in theaters next year. Maybe it's just something like that, but still a video message from set, who knows. It could be a trailer, we will see. I think Blade gets moved out of 2025 into that first slot in 2026, before, what's it called? And look, I'm going to be honest with you right now. Like, allegedly the Russos are going to be doing, the next two Avengers movies. They're going to come out on stage if that's the case. They're going to be like, "Look, we have the Russos back." I think also we get the formal rebrand, and I've said this since the Marvels, or maybe even before the Marvels. I don't know. Go through the feed and listen to all the episodes, and let me know when I said it first, because I've been saying this for a while now. I think we're looking at an Avengers vs X-Men rebrand and then Secret Wars for Part Two. And if that's the case, then they do like it's a smart move to do that. But I think the thing is, I think you got to delay it a year, and that's what I think we're going to end up seeing. I think we're going to see both Avengers movies get delayed by a year each, or Avengers, because the original plan, if you recall, was Secret Wars and what was the other one? And Kang Dynasty was supposed to come out 6 months apart. Where it's supposed to be May, November. Like, like, put it in that perspective. If that's the case and they want to do that, then fine. I think the smarter move, if you're going to delay it all, though, is to do 2027, 2028. That way you can end the multiverse saga on the 20th anniversary. Because if you recall, Infinity War was the 10th anniversary. I think that's a smart move if you're Marvel. Um, I think too we get an announcement for other movies for those dates. I think at least one of them is Armor Wars, which has been in development for quite some time. And I think that we have there's another movie that was allegedly in development. And let's be realistic. I think it comes with some of the Disney Plus stuff too. I just think it's interesting that this is the situation that they're in. Like, I think that you may run the risk of running out of stuff to talk about at D23, and you want to have something there. But I think you come full with the theatrical slate, and you kind of like, you know, you push to prove that there's nothing wrong. You come in and you want to come in a position of strength. You want to make it seem like like we hear your issues and we're going to address them, but we're not going to say we did anything wrong. And it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this and what gets announced. I would not be shocked if the announcement of Avengers vs. X-Men comes tomorrow, if only because you can ride high off of this movie and you can build that momentum. And even if you have a misfire next year, it's still something. So it'll be interesting. And I think, too, it's like, the other thing is, I think there's a chance that Fantastic Four gets moved back. And let me explain why. The first Avengers movie, the last movie before it, is The First Avenger. Captain America, The First Avenger. A movie that ends with Captain America saving the day, but being lost from his own universe, but being lost from his time. He ends up frozen in the ice. He ends up frozen, and he ends up getting found. And that movie ends with him breaking out of S.H.I.E.L.D. custody and ending up in modern New York. There's a possibility that you put Fantastic Four right before Avengers vs. X-Men, and this is that. And I think it'd be really interesting if this is the Fantastic Four of the universe of, like, Prime Deadpool. Where it's like this, like I said, this Deadpool universe seems to be a entirely correct version, like, comic accurate, here's the X-Men, yay, look at the X-Men, like, that kind of universe is where we see, Deadpool hail from. If that's the universe where, the Fantastic Four aren't there because they went missing in the 60s, that could be interesting. Like, say that that's why this universe doesn't have a Fantastic Four, and that's why in this movie, when Wade encounters Johnny Storm, he doesn't realize that that's Johnny Storm. Why? Because his Johnny Storm's different. He doesn't look like Chris Evans. His Johnny Storm is the one from, like, his universe had a different one, or none at all. Because he seems baffled by the existence of Johnny Storm, which is something that, like, is weird for Deadpool. Like, he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know he's a member of the Fantastic Four. He just knows that he's there. And I think, too, it's like there's a car with a 4 on it. It's like a hover car. I think that's going to be something that comes into play in Fantastic Four. That movie's going to end because, as we know from the press materials and from what's been talked about so far, it's an alternate universe. Initial reports said this is not the prime MCU that's going to have the Fantastic Four. This is an alternate universe, and if that's the case, what moves them over? They save and then they go to an alternate universe, and that's where they end off, and they end up in the MCU right before the incursion. They saw the incursion the first time, and now they're here with it there. I think that would be an interesting place to put it, and some interesting symmetry in the story. But we'll see. But we'll wrap up there for today. To hear our coverage of San Diego Comic Con on Sunday, check out MWPnews.com and 30-minute reviews, which we're going to have the review. Yeah, we'll wrap up there for today. And until our next episode, which will be tomorrow morning, we'll be doing Kite Man. Have a great rest of your week.